For decades, Iran and Saudi Arabia were just bitter rivals. I mean, they were locked in this Cold War that basically defined the entire Middle East. And then, almost out of nowhere, a deal was struck. So today, we're going to break down this surprise truce, this huge geopolitical shift that has left pretty much everyone asking the same question. What in the world happens next?
You know, this quote really frames the whole situation perfectly. It's like a high-stakes poker game for the future of the entire Middle East. For so long, the hostility between Riyadh and Tehran, well, it set all the rules. But now, the cards have been totally reshuffled, the players are making moves you'd never expect, and all those old strategies, they just don't apply anymore.
So the big question is, right, how did two nations locked in this struggle for regional dominance for more than a generation suddenly just agree to reestablish ties? And maybe even more surprising, why was it China, not the US, that somehow managed to bring them to the table? Well, to really understand this new power play, we first have to get a handle on the old one.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning, because this isn't just some modern political squabble, you know? This is a conflict with really, really deep roots. If we want to understand the headlines we're seeing today, we've got to look at how this whole rivalry was built, piece by painful piece, over decades.
When you get right down to it, this whole rivalry is really built on a foundation of completely opposing identities. I mean, just look at the breakdown. On one side, you've got Saudi Arabia, ethnically Arab, religiously Sunni, politically a monarchy, and for decades, a key U.S. ally. And on the other side, you've got Iran, Persian, Shia, a revolutionary theocracy, and proudly, fiercely anti-American. Both of them claim to be the leader of the Muslim world, but their worldviews, they just couldn't be more different.
And if you want to pinpoint the moment it all changed, you have to look at 1979. That year was basically the earthquake that shattered the old order. See, before the revolution, Iran and Saudi Arabia were, well, they were both monarchies, and both were allied with the US. But then the Shah was overthrown, and Iran was totally remade into a revolutionary theocracy. That single event created the strategic pillars that have defined the Gulf for a generation. You have American friendship with Riyadh on one side, and total hostility toward Tehran on the other.
So, this rivalry, well, it quickly became way too big for just two countries. It didn't stay contained within their borders. Oh no. It spilled out all across the region, turning whole nations, places like Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, into battlegrounds. It was like a dangerous chessboard for a really destructive proxy Cold War.
Now, you might be hearing that term proxy war and wondering what it actually means. Well, it's pretty simple. It's when major powers want to fight each other, but avoid a direct, catastrophic conflict. So instead, they back opposing sides in other countries' wars. They let their proxies, local militias, rebel groups, even governments, do the dirty work and the fighting for them.
In Syria, wow, Syria became the horrifying epicenter of this whole strategy. See, for Iran, the Assad regime is an absolutely crucial ally. It's a land bridge to its most powerful proxy, Hezbollah, in Lebanon. So Tehran has poured billions into keeping Assad in power. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia was on the other side, backing rebel groups trying desperately to break that alliance and roll back Iran's influence.
Then you have Iraq. From Riyadh's perspective, the 2003 U.S. invasion was nothing short of a strategic disaster. They saw it as this enormous gift to Tehran. Why? Well, it got rid of Saddam Hussein, who was a Sunni leader and a major bloc against Iran. And he was replaced with a Shia-dominated government that, of course, naturally tilted towards its powerful Shia neighbor, Iran. And then, of course, there's Yemen. It's the same pattern. Iran backed the Houthi rebels, and in response, Saudi Arabia launched a full-on direct military intervention. The result? It wasn't just a strategic stalemate. It became one of the world's worst humanitarian crises, with millions and millions of people caught right in the crossfire. And this brings us to a really, really crucial point. Okay? While the Sunni-Shia divide is absolutely real, this conflict, it's not just about theology. It's about geopolitics. It's about power. Both sides have used sectarian identity almost like a political tool. They pull the strings to mobilize supporters, to justify their actions, and to turn what is essentially a modern power struggle into something that feels ancient, absolute, and unavoidable.
All right, so for decades, there was really only one major outside power in this whole equation, the United States. But then, Washington started to kind of pivot away from the Middle East, and when that happened, a power vacuum was created. And, as we're about to see, a new player, the Dragon, stepped right onto the stage to change the game completely.
And this comparison right here really shows two completely different diplomatic playbooks. The US model, for a long time, has been about picking sides, right? You have special allies, and you have total enemies. China's approach, totally different.
They want to maintain good, cordial relations with everyone. Their main interest isn't picking a winner, it's making sure the energy keeps flowing. And it was exactly this neutrality that made Beijing the only great power that both Riyadh and Tehran felt they could actually trust to mediate a deal.
And you know what? That unique position was backed by some immense leverage. China is Saudi Arabia's single largest trading partner. And for Iran, which has been crippled by US sanctions for years, China is pretty much its only economic lifeline. As one analyst put it, there's very little standing between the Iranian regime and total economic collapse besides Beijing. Now that is some powerful leverage to bring to the negotiating table. And so, with China playing the role of broker, a deal was struck. But let's be real, a few handshakes and reopened embassies don't just erase decades of deep-seated hostility. So the big question on everyone's mind now is this fragile peace a real, genuine realignment? Or is it just a temporary truth? Can this new equilibrium actually hold?
The truth is, this new bridge of peace, it's built over a very, very deep canyon of mistrust. I mean, the deal hasn't ended the proxy wars. It hasn't just erased decades of bad blood. And it sure hasn't changed Iran's view of America as the great Satan. Fundamentally, all the core issues that kickstarted this whole rivalry, they're all still there, just simmering right beneath the surface.
And this really gets to the core tension, the central paradox of the whole situation. It's what some analysts call the Gulf's structural disequilibrium, which is a fancy way of saying the whole setup is just fundamentally unstable. Think of it like a seesaw. Iran is always trying to push the US out of the region so it can be the top dog. But Saudi Arabia, it will always want the US on its side of the seesaw as a security guarantee against Iran. This new agreement, it hasn't solved that fundamental imbalance. Not at all.
Which brings us to our final, lingering question. There's no doubt the China broker deal has redrawn the diplomatic map of the Middle East. But with all those deep-seated rivalries and those fundamental structural tensions still very much in place, we're left to wonder, are we really witnessing the dawn of a new era of cooperation, or is this just a strategic pause, a new chapter in a very old and maybe intractable conflict?